My name is Bree Reynolds, and I'm the Director of Online Content at FlexJobs. And I'll be your host today, kind of walking you through the event. I'm going to go over some housekeeping steps, and then we will go ahead and talk about topics and get started with the actual presentation. So first things first, the presentation is going to go for about an hour. We're going to do about a half an hour of presentation. I'll be speaking with our guest expert today, and then we're going to open it up to audience questions. So throughout the seminar, and even right now, if you have a burning question, please feel free to ask that in the questions box on your GoToWebinar control panel. If you don't see your control panel, look around for a little orange arrow on your screen, and if you click that arrow, the control panel should open up. Another little handy magic tip there for you. So like I said, it's going to go for about an hour. Also, we will be recording this, so if you have any questions as we're going along and you forgot a piece of the advice that was given, please feel free to check out the recording. We'll be sending that out in an email to everyone after the presentation is over, so you can look for that over the next day or so. We'll be getting that recording out there. And so yeah, let's go into some of the topics that people are going to hear about today. So first, actually, I wanted to introduce our panel, which is actually one person short. So we have a really awesome one-person panel today. We have Carol Tice. She's been a freelance writer for over 20 years, and she's the founder and den mother of freelancewritersden.com and makealivinwriting.com. Her clients have included Entrepreneur Magazine, Forbes.com, CBS, Seattle Business, and she's also written 2 traditional and 6 ebooks. So she has a tremendous wealth of experience, and we are really excited to have her here today. Hi, Carol.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for joining us. And we were supposed to also have Alexis Grant. She is the founder of Social Alexis and therightlife.com. Unfortunately, Alexis is sick today, so she's not able to join us. But Carol has graciously agreed to sort of cover all manner of topics related to freelance writing. So we will be able to give you the info that you came for. And again, I said my name is Bree Reynolds. I'm the Director of Online Content at FlexJobs, and I've also been a career and job search advice writer for about the last 10 years. So I have a lot of freelance writing experience under my belt, and I'm happy to kind of field questions there. But I am also going to be talking about the remote and flexible job market for writing jobs, and sort of just information on that topic. So thank you all again very much for joining us today. I think we have a really good group. It sounds like we got a lot of enthusiasm, judging by the questions area. And let's go ahead and get started. So the topics that we're going to cover today include what it's like to be a writer as a profession, sort of for anybody who's looking at this from outside of the writing world, wondering what it exactly entails. We'll be talking about that. Different writing opportunities that exist, the tools that are most useful for freelance writers to utilize, the entrepreneurship or business of being a writer, the writing job market, including remote and flexible jobs, and some surprising writing jobs that you might not have heard of before, and then, like I said, our Q&A panel. So we'll be getting to all of those over the next hour or so. So first, let's dive in with some insights from Carol. So Carol, talk to me a little bit about, based on your experience over the last 20 years or so, what the freelance marketplace is like today as compared to maybe 20 years ago. What are some of the differences that you've seen in your time in the freelance writing market?
Wow, well, lots and lots of them. And, you know, I know a lot of people who say, oh, it's really horrible now, and I find that almost all of those people have not been around long enough to remember when we had to physically mail in our query letters, and when we wanted to research a fact, we had to go drive to the library, and when we wanted to find magazine markets to write for, we needed to go to the library and look in the Gales Guide, and it was real, you know, we didn't carve our articles on a rock, but about everything short of that, it was a lot harder and more time-consuming to find experts without the internet, to get them to talk to you, to record an interview, all without any of the online tools that we have today. And the business was just a lot more local because of the lack of the internet. you were really thinking about companies and magazines mostly in your own major city that you were in. And if you were in a small town, you were kind of in up a creek. There was nothing and rates weren't good. And so all of that has changed, you know, both for better and for worse with the rise of the internet. Now I cannot believe how easy it is to find markets to pitch, to find sources to talk to. You know, it's all do a Google search and presto. You have so much information at your fingertips in an instant. And I mean, as someone who dates back to when we were faxing in drafts of articles on fax machines, it's incredible. I honestly never get over how awesome it is, how easy it is now to communicate, to connect with editors. And the other thing is, thanks to LinkedIn, you know, what used to happen is an editor would be great and you'd have this great relationship, and then one day they'd get fired and they'd disappear, and the one phone number and email you knew for them was no longer good, and you didn't know where they went, and you had no way to stay in touch with them. And now you hop on LinkedIn and, you know, shoot them an in-mail and say, hey, you know, let me know where you're going to go next. I'm excited to, you know, work with you wherever you land, and you can keep that relationship. And so the ability to like grow your network of contacts is just amazingly improved. Obviously, the dark side of it all is that now that it's a global business, which means that if you're applying for the wrong kind of jobs, you're competing with people in third world countries whose standards of living and, you know, currency work completely differently and are willing to work for $5 a 1,000-word article, and you find yourself in an unsustainable scenario where it's not really a living for anyone in a developed nation. So, you know, to me the real challenge today is understanding the marketplace and staying out of what I like to call the underworld of freelance writing, all of these Craigslist ads and content mills and bid sites where the winner of the job is whoever wants to do it for the least money, and finding clients in better ways.
Yeah, and we're very excited to sort of cover those different ways and also the places to kind of avoid too, or things to avoid in the webinar. So yeah, and it sounds like, I mean, if people are interested in becoming freelance writers right now, it's a pretty good time to get into it. So when some people are looking at becoming freelance writers, what sort of tools do you recommend that people use if they want to succeed? I know some people are asking about, you know, social media, writing websites. Is it important to have your own website as a writer? So could you talk about some of the tools that you've found helpful and some of the ones that you really think are the most important for freelance writers to adopt?
Yeah, absolutely. I think people are really boggled by all the social media channels that are out there and how could I use them all. And what I like to say is if you're new to social media and you don't feel like a natural affinity for it, you don't find it fun to hang out on Twitter, if you're only going to do one social media platform, make it LinkedIn. You know, I saw a great speech Guy Kawasaki gave a couple of years ago at NMX, which is formerly Blog World, and he went through each social media channel and talked about sort of their branding of like, what are they about? And when he got to LinkedIn, he actually didn't even include them, and we were like, what about LinkedIn? And he said, LinkedIn is for pimping. LinkedIn is the only social media channel where everyone there is nakedly and plainly there to promote their business, and that's okay. It is okay to ask people, not for work directly, but for referrals. Hey, could you keep an ear out? You know, it's basically like a gigantic in-person networking meeting that's happening online and allows you to do that networking with people all over the world instead of just people in your town. And the rules on there, to me, are pretty much the same. You want to be friendly. You want to help other people. You want to find out who their ideal client is so they'll care to know what yours is, and they'll refer you, and you'll look out for them. But people love to refer people on LinkedIn. It's a totally okay ask to in-mail everyone and, you know, say, hey, I'm this kind of a freelance writer, and I'm looking for this kind of client. If you could keep an ear out, I'd appreciate it. And people actually love to do that on there. And you need to take LinkedIn seriously and have a really robust profile with good keywords. What people don't understand is LinkedIn is a gigantic search engine that really great companies and publications are using all the time to find freelance help that they need. I was found and hired on LinkedIn by Costco, by Alaska Airlines Magazine, by another Fortune 500 here in Seattle, TrueBlue, which used to be Labor Ready. I think people do not understand that this is a great place you can get found. But you have to fill out the whole profile, have a picture of yourself, take the platform seriously, come on once a week, update your status about something, join some groups, use the platform, be active in it, so that when they do that search for your type of writer, you come up in search results, because it will index by how active people are and how completely filled out their profiles are, and what their relevant keywords are. But I have in my freelance writers den community, we've seen just success after success after success of people who had freelance writer as their LinkedIn tagline and changed it to Seattle freelance healthcare writer, and like the next day they got a gig. People are searching on there all the time. So the final thing you need on LinkedIn is a link to, yes, your writer website, and you really do need one. It doesn't need to be super elaborate, but if you do not have a website where you can show your portfolio, it's really like you're invisible now. No one can take you seriously if you can't take the time to put up a website. There's a service I like called Writer's Residence that has a free trial, and it's like $8 a month or something, $9 a month after that. So there's really affordable help out there for putting one up, and you really need it up there so that you have somewhere to send people. It's sort of, your online business card. It's just, if you don't exist on the internet, the problem is a lot of the jobs are online now. So if you don't exist online, who is going to hire you to do online writing? They're just going to think you don't get it. So you're kind of letting yourself out of a lot of good potential markets if you don't have a at least rudimentary, homepage, about page, portfolio page, and some contacts of where people can get in touch with you. So I kind of consider those the two basics. You've got a functional writer website, and it's got those same keywords going on for Google searches, and you've got a LinkedIn profile. I think if you've got those two, you're in pretty good shape.
Great, yeah, and then it's such a good point that you bring up, that having that website with so many of the writing jobs existing online and solely online, that without having that, it is sort of leaving out a giant piece of any potential application. If you're thinking about everything you have to offer and putting it into a job application, well, a lot of writing jobs, as you've talked about, are found through people finding you and finding you as a writer. The changing your keywords on LinkedIn with healthcare writer, such a good example, and to be missing that key piece of having your own website that really kind of defines you, puts your work out there, and makes it easy for people to find you and understand the kind of work that you could do for them. That's a big piece to miss if you don't have it.
Having the website really, and make sure your links are clickable. I'm always going on writer websites because I do reviews, and they'll have, so email me at this, but you can't click on that and get the email to pop up. Show that you get the internet on that site, and have links that are not naked and not dead, that are enlivened words like nature intended, and, just show you kind of have a little internet savvy and you know how it works. And they'll, the thing is, there's just so much online work on, and you can write that site. People will say to me, well, I'm not putting up a site because I don't have any clips yet. But your site is a clip. Your site, write the heck out of it, and you've created a copywriting sample of how you can write websites. You can write website content. So make that your first sample if you have nothing else. And it's great because you don't have to wait. You don't need a client. You don't even need to find like a pro bono client. Just get it up and show people your personality. Show people you have a way with words, because there's so much work out there that is content, online content writing, online web page writing, online blogging. There's a lot of work. You know, I've written $2,000 articles that were for a website. You know, as ad revenue moves online, magazines are moving online. A lot of the work is going online. So put up your website and show them you get online.
Yep, exactly. And also sort of kind of along the same lines of show that you are savvy, that you kind of get the internet, that you can write for the internet. In terms of searching for freelance jobs and being savvy about that part of the process, I understand that you have some tips for using online job ads effectively so people just aren't wasting their time applying to every, you know, 2-bit writing job that's out there. So could you talk a little bit about that, the online job search process and your tips for that?
Yeah, absolutely, because if you don't do it in a thoughtful way, it's just the biggest time waster, and you're just going to spend all the livelong night and day looking at online job ads and not doing any other form of marketing. And really, you want to be pretty efficient with how you look at online job ads, because you should be doing proactive marketing to find your own clients. The vast majority of great freelance writing jobs that exist today will never be advertised. So you need to be prospecting just like in any other job where you sell any other type of product or service. You need to find your clients, not assume that a, you know, content mill dashboard or Craigslist is going to deliver your clients, because I just know very few writers who are making any kind of a living relying on these kind of sites. I mean, the first thing I'd say is, in general, avoid mass job boards that don't have a membership fee. They're not behind a paywall. They're not niche. The mass online job boards, you just know that every job you're looking at, 10,000 writers are replying to that. So your odds of getting that gig are just so ridiculously long. And almost by nature, there's a little dysfunctionality to any company that's putting an ad on a mass job board, because functional companies do not want to look through 1,000 resumes to try and find somebody. That's not how they function, because that's ridiculous. That's not efficient for them. Mm-hmm. So you know that these are like bottom-feeding people. They're going to kind of cruise through these, pick whoever is the cheapest, and it's just not a world you want to be part of. You know, places like FlexJobs, not to be a walking ad or anything, where you, and full disclosure, my freelance writers den community has a relationship with FlexJobs where we are able to feature about a half dozen of their best listings every week to give people kind of a taste of it. But places where you have to pay, or places where the job posters have to pay, both qualify better clients right away and limit the pool of people who are looking and who are qualified. So, you know, if you look at, first of all, you know, niche boards like FlexJobs are patrolling thousands and thousands and thousands of obscure job boards that you are like never going to find. That's the sort of the service they're providing for you, is that it's a huge time saver. And just I know looking through the FlexJob ads that there are ads in there that, you know, I would just never turn up, that, you know, like Harvard Business School wants a freelance copywriter. Like, I'm never going to find that where they've just posted it on their own little Harvard site. So it's a convenience, and there's the screen that not every writer in the universe is looking at this job. So once you've found some better niche boards, then you want to look through them for things that are you. Not try and apply to everything and anything, even though you really have nothing to say about why you would be the writer for that gig. You want to, you know, what I used to do is scan through for words that related to my background. Like, I was a legal secretary, so if I saw ones that wanted, you know, that were for a legal website or something, then I would respond and say, oh yeah, I, you know, no fear of legal terminology here. I was a legal secretary. And I would get a response. Even on mass job ads, even trolling like really big boards, I could get a response. And what I ended up doing was challenging myself to spend like 15 minutes 3 times a week was like all the time I would allow myself to look at online ads. And so I would just dive bomb through them looking for those ones that's like, oh my God, I am the writer for this. And then those I would apply to. And everything else, forget it. Anything you look at that's a blind ad, you don't know what they don't give you a website, they don't give you a contact, I'm always really suspicious. There are some good reasons why people do blind ads. I actually got hired off of one that was CBS. So sometimes if it's really a brand name, they just feel like they're going to get too inundated. But, look at what they're saying about themselves. And hopefully, if they're not a blind ad, you can go look and do a little tiny bit of research. And, take a look at their website and see if you can find a bio, find out how long they've been around. When I started coaching back in like 2007 or so, I used to say I liked companies that sell the real product in the real world and have been around since before the internet. But at this point, the internet is older, so I am more flexible on that. I mean, they'd have to be like 15 years old now. But what there is online in the job ads is a ton of brand new startup wannabe companies that have thrown up a website and they're hoping to slap a bunch of content on it and get ads against it and get some revenue. And that is not a viable business model today. And those are companies to avoid, and there's tons of that. And they'll be like, oh, we'll pay you on traffic, and they don't have any traffic to share with you. And so you really want to watch out look for legit companies that have been around for a while. The only kind of startups that I ever tell people to take an interest in are startups that have gotten venture capital money, where they have money to spend on marketing. There's a lot of startup flaky, fly-by-night stuff on the internet, and I hear a lot of sad stories about people not getting paid and companies vanishing on them, and you need to do the business basics, which maybe we should move into talking about in terms of how you run your business to make sure you don't get scammed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are all fantastic points, and I've just some of the comments that are coming in from people already is that what you're saying is really resonating.
Good.
So that's, yeah, so far so good. And so I know kind of in addition to those types of online job ads for freelance writing, kind of one-off projects or maybe multiple article projects, you have also used full-time job ads to find freelance work. How have you done that?
Yeah, and a lot of people I think don't ever do that. They think, well, they're looking for a full-time person and I don't want to be a full-time person. But having been a full-time writer, having been a staff writer at 2 different publications for a total of 12 years, I've learned a lot about what goes into making a full-time staff writer hire. And it's a process that can often take 6 months to a year. It's a big decision. They really want to make sure there's a great fit. In the first staff job I got, they gave, I believe, 24 people or 36 a writing test, and I was the only one who wrote something they thought they could put in the publication, and it took a year. And we were never fully staffed at either of those publications the whole time I was a staff writer. As soon as you finally get one in, the next one quits. And behind the scenes of that empty position, of that open position, is a scene of chaos, because that person's work cannot just be shoved onto everyone else, or they will also quit, causing a chain reaction. So usually what they're doing when they have an open full-time position is they've taken that salary money and moved it to the freelance line, and they're looking to freelance out some stuff until they get that hire. Really common solution.
Oh, this is fascinating.
So, yeah, they just have the freelance budget until they've got their staff back up. And often it just like never happens. So if they connect with a good freelancer, they might decide they don't need a staffer and they might just work a lot with you, or by the time they get that staffer, they have another opening and their freelance needs just continue. So what I would do, and I used this once to get a terrific buck-a-word client off a LinkedIn job ad, and I love the full-time job ads on LinkedIn. because those are all companies that are paying to list. So that immediately qualifies a way better pool of clients. And you just go in and apply. A lot of times they force you to go through like an online application process. So I would just do it. I would go through the 93 steps they make you go through. And then when you get to the cover letter, I would just say, hey, actually, you know, a happy freelance writer, not looking for a full-time job, but I was curious whether you need any freelance help while you're in this process. So I could really help you out. Once again, only to jobs that I know all about. Oh, as it happens, I used to write for the Seattle Times real estate section, so I know all about real estate, and, you know, I could totally help you with this. You'd be surprised how many responses you will get to that. And or you might also discover that someone has been trolling for a full-time person, and maybe they're at that point of realizing that maybe having a contractor could work for them. You may just hit them at that moment where they're starting to go, you know, we're really not finding anybody. It's been months and we're not finding the right person. Maybe we should use freelancers. You know, every study they do about the future of creative work is that companies are just increasingly outsourcing and wanting to use contract labor for the kind of thing we do. So, you know, you never know when you'll hit someone having that thought. Maybe you can convince them. You can be the person who convinces them to freelance the gig out. But the other thing is to just use those full-time job ads to get acquainted with companies that use writers. And people often make the assumption that if they have staff writers, they never use freelancers, and that is really false. Because just because you have a staff doesn't mean they can do everything. You know, they might have an annual report they need to do, or suddenly they decide they need 12 case studies in 2 weeks, and it's totally beyond the capacity of their in-house staff, or it's something their in-house staff doesn't know about. You know, a lot of people have been like, Costco, you know, don't they have their own staff of writers? Of course they do, but they wanted to write a business services newsletter, and they wanted it to feel like journalism and like articles in it, and they felt like their marketing people didn't have the right voice for that. So you just don't know what needs they might have that are beyond their staff. So that's sort of my stump speech about full-time job ads. I think they're very useful prospecting tools.
Yeah, and some things that I had never thought about. You know, sort of how to kind of gauge what's happening behind the scenes in a business before you even can see behind the scenes. You can get a sense of what their staffing is doing and what they might have potentially for freelance as a result of the staff turnover and all that sort of stuff. So that's really interesting.
Well, you know, if people only come away with like one thing from this hour, I just say that there's a lot of negative self-talk that goes on in freelance writers' heads where they see a job ad and they're like, oh, well, they would never hire someone like me, and, you know, I don't feel qualified enough to do this. And you really want to reverse that and look at it all as a big adventure and take a flyer on things and just go, hey, you know, maybe I could do that gig. I'm just going to apply, see what happens. You know, the worst that happens is they say no. So err on the side of applying and seeing what happens. And don't, you know, my big slogan is be a writer, not a waiter. Don't apply for a job and then wait around to see if they get back to you and not do anything while you're waiting and seeing. Apply for the gig, assume immediately that you will never hear from them, and move on to do more marketing this minute. Keep on marketing. Run on the assumption that none of those people are going to talk to you, and you need to keep finding more prospects, and just keep being creative about who you think might be a fit for you.
Great, and kind of along the same lines of keeping yourself busy, of you know, like you said, applying, assuming that you'll never hear back, and keeping going. Always keep moving and keeping yourself busy. So, in terms of keeping everything going and being a business of one, being a freelance writer, what are some of the pieces of the business side of the entrepreneurship, I guess you might call it, of being a writer that you think are really important? And then also, you know, what are the main things that you need to focus on as a business person now that you're sort of running your own business? And then a lot of people, of course, are asking how to determine freelance writer rates. So if you have any tips for determining rates, also I think the vast majority of our audience would like to hear for that.
Yeah, it's one of the biggest mysteries in freelance writing because there really aren't going rates for anything. There isn't a magical answer. People are like, but what's the going rate for blog posts? But there isn't one. It depends on a million factors. How big that company is, how much content they're developing, how in-depth and complex their topic and their word count is, and their, do they want interviews? And there really aren't going rates, and that's why it's really essential that you don't operate in a vacuum and you are part of a writer network where you can ballpark figures off of people and get feedback. And that's one of the big reasons that I created Freelance Writers Den. And I can see it being super useful to people every day. People ballpark rates in the forums and say, okay, I got this offer. It was for this much to do this much. What do you think about that? And people will be like, that sounds pretty good. Or, we'll be like, no, way too low, And honestly, I've benefited from that myself. I once bid a government contract. And as I was prepping it, this was to write a couple of annual reports for a transit agency. I ran it by a friend of mine who actually used to write with me at one of my staff jobs, and we've stayed in touch over the years. And she was like, no, that is too low. I'm sorry. You need to put at least this much more in. And I did what she said, and they didn't blink. So that was money, like a couple $1,000s more that I just would have left on the table if I hadn't had people to run it by. You really don't want to operate in a vacuum. The other big tip is don't be scared to ask clients what their budget is for it and see if you can get them to tell you what they pay, rather than just having to blind bid in a total vacuum where you have just no idea whether this is the kind of client who wants to pay $5 for a blog post or would pay $500 for a blog post. Just see if you can get them to tip their hand at all. You'd be surprised how often they'll say. Or they might say, we've never done this before and we're kind of looking to you for guidance, in which case name some nice big numbers. In the Den, for instance, we think of about $50 a blog post as a floor, below which we don't list anything in our own job board. And we like to see $100 a post. And that's for like short posts you write in an hour, and a half. So to return to your topic about the sort of solopreneur business mindset, the biggest problem I encounter is that most freelance writers do not have that mindset. They don't wake up in the morning and think, I'm in business. They think, I'm writing and I'm trying to find gigs and it's kind of a thing, and I follow my muse and I write about this and that. And the people who don't have a business mentality don't tend to earn very well because you're not doing it in a strategic way and you're not following a set of goals you have, and you're just kind of taking whatever gigs you see on Craigslist, and this doesn't end well. It does not result in good income. Two, I have heard so many heartbreak stories, and you really want to start at the beginning, just like if you were opening a retail store, except for having to have physical inventory. Really, almost everything else you want to think through. What is my positioning? Who is my customer? I need to register my business. When I get hired, I need contracts. If I give you one other big takeaway, just don't write without a contract. And there's lots of really casual hiring going on online, and then you don't get paid because you have no legal leg to stand on. There's nothing you can do to pursue payment if you don't have a contract. And I just had a story in the Den this morning from someone who wrote 5 articles, and they went up and they put someone else's name on them. And I'm assuming, she was like, what do I do? And I'm assuming that means I have no contract that specified I get a byline. So you really want to nail down the relationship in a business-like sort of way before you start writing for people. And what we had people do recently in the Den, we did a business boot camp where we really made everyone get into a business mindset, and it was terrific. It was like the best thing we ever did. We made everyone do a SWOT analysis, which is That stands for strengths, weaknesses. Let's see if I can remember them all. Opportunities and threats. Yeah,
Ah, yes.
having a blank there. Yeah, like what do you have on the ball? What do you bring to this party? Like in my case, I had some legal experience. Maybe that would be good. You know, maybe you worked in a bank. You kind of have an acquaintance with financial services. What are your strengths? What don't you have going for you that you need to work on and learn about? What is the opportunity in your marketplace? You know, maybe you're in one of those cities that's got a ton of healthcare, you know, or it's part of the military industrial complex, and, you know, identify the major markets that might be most accessible to you, and then what sort of threatens your business? You know, do you not have enough cash? Are you going to run out of cash at the end of the month if you haven't scored $5,000 worth of gigs? You know, if so, that's not going to work well, because it takes time to ramp a business, and freelance writing isn't any different. If you operate from a desperation mode, you're just going to take a lot of really, really low-paying gigs because they tend to, all those content mills pay really promptly, and you can't wait, you know, a month for a check to show up, and you get trapped in a real gerbil wheel scenario where it's very hard to find the time to market and to find really good clients. And so out of that SWOT, we made people build a business plan and a marketing plan. So what is your business plan? Where do you want this business to be in 3 years, in 5 years, at the end of this year? What are you imagining here? Who would you be writing for? What would they be paying you? What do you want to earn this year? How are you going to get there? What is your marketing plan? Who is your ideal client? Okay, well, what's the best type of marketing for that type of client? Those are the kind of conversations you want to have with yourself. And you want to just be legit so that you can get your business expenses written off your taxes and present yourself to the IRS or your country taxing agency as a legitimate business. Here in the U.S., you can get an EIN, an employer identification number, and register your business with your state, and, you know, be legit. That will impress IRS that you're really doing business. That will help them. Have a separate checking account for your business. You know, do all the basic things you do if you were setting up a store. And then marketing. You know, who would expect a retail store to open and not have a grand opening and not send out flyers and not put an ad in the newspaper and not sponsor a softball team and not do anything to raise awareness in that community that they exist? You would expect that business to go out of business, right? And yet, freelance writers every day go along doing no marketing and hoping that somehow sort of jobs are going to fall out of the sky, you know, or that Craigslist ad that 10,000 people responded to, they're going to get that gig. And it's just not, that's not a business-like attitude. That's the luck fairy will bring me a job, magical thinking approach to freelancing. So that's not, it's not effective.
Yep, absolutely, absolutely. And then I know we have a number of people on the call here, and this is one of our questions just in general, our topics to cover, is tips for transitioning to writing from other careers. We have a lot of people who are talking about having been in another career field for 10 or 15 years. They've done writing as part of that career, whether it's internal sorts of documents and things like that, and they've always been interested in breaking out as freelance writers. What are some of your tips for people who are just starting out in that sort of situation?
Well, there's sort of two ways to play it. One is to quit your job and go cold turkey and, you know, go crazy and start marketing and be a freelance writer. Many of us, that happened to without our consent in 2008 and 9 and 10. And that's how we got into it. If you have the luxury of planning your exit, you can start freelancing on the side, hopefully, and maybe build up a couple of clients and just start getting a feel for it and whether you like the dynamic of it, because the big thing is there is no boss standing over you saying you need to do X and Y and Z now by X deadline or else you'll be fired. And a lot of people have a lot of trouble functioning without a boss. So, you know, you might want to try and do it. Yeah, I know writers who quit, and a year later they have used up all the savings they saved. They have never gotten a gig, and they go back and get another day job, and it's like really heartbreaking. So you have to realize that there's a real self-discipline to being, only one person cares about the success of this freelance writing business, and it's you. You have to get up every day and make it happen out of your own drive to make that happen and to have this lifestyle and to not have to only have 2 weeks vacation a year and, all of and have to show up at X time and work there till X time. If you want to get out of that world, you're going to have to make this happen with your bare hands and your brain and your pen and your computer. That's, no one else is going to make this happen and is going to be the driver of giving you deadlines and all. You have to create that whole structure. So if you freelance a little on the side, it can sometimes give you a sense of whether the hustle of finding clients is kind of something you can do. My recommendation is learn to love it. And, I had never marketed myself. I had been a staff journalist for 12 years, and I came to look at marketing myself as kind of a fun challenge and just sort of a science experiment. I'm going to send out these 10 letters of introduction to businesses, and now I'll see what happens. And then it's like, oh, well, I got one client out of that, and that was how I wrote that letter. I'm going to do more of that again. I think if you think of it more like that, then I'm being rejected. It's a lot emotionally healthier for you. And but not everyone can do it. And really, I'd say that's probably the number one problem I see is people say, well, I'm really shy and I can't go to networking meetings and I never feel like my query letters are good enough to press send on. This is a big problem if you want to do this for a living. You really have to get over that hump and find a type of marketing that you are willing to do. And people are always asking me, what is the one fastest, best, low-cost way to market your business that I should do? And the correct answer is the type of marketing you're willing to do. If you're, I can tell you all day how great in-person networking is, or writing clever applications off of niche job board ads that you see, but if you're not willing to do one of those, I'm wasting my time with you because you're not going to do it. There are people who market on LinkedIn or on Twitter. They love it. They do it all the time, or do in-person networking, and they love that. Or they send marketing emails, and they love that. So you have to find some approach that you feel an affinity for and that you're willing to do a lot of, because especially when you start out, it's a numbers game. It's really about sending out a lot of marketing and seeing what starts to get a response and what sticks. And that's how you figure out everything, really, is from getting real market data on what are the results you get. And people are always asking me, but tell me how much of your time do you spend marketing versus writing? And the thing is, the answer to that is not helpful to you in any way, because you're not me. It's so individual. Business is so individual, and every writer is unique and has unique things to offer and wants a different type of writing to do, and you are going to have to create a unique marketing plan based on what you are trying to accomplish here, and you'll have to execute on it. And the other thing we do in Freelance Writers Den that I think really helps is getting a writer accountability buddy. Get another writer pal where you can call each other once a week and say, okay, you said you were going to send 10 query letters last week. What happened? Why aren't they done? What's holding you up? Let's go. Get it done, baby. That really helps to create sort of some of that boss structure. It helps to replace the missing boss problem. Or find a writer.
I would second the buddy.
Yeah, find a writer group, or in the Den we have a Share Your Goals monthly forum that we do, where people come on and say, this month I'm going to get this done, and then they have to come back at the end of the month and say what they got done. And it's just amazing how powerful it is. If you tell anybody that I will do X, all of a sudden you feel more of an obligation to do that than you did when you just told yourself you were going to do it, and nobody else really knew. But that's one of the reasons I'm a big fan of in-person networking, is because it causes you to go around saying, I'm a freelance writer, I'm a freelance writer, I'm a freelance writer to people all night. And I find that that's really good for you. Even if you don't get any clients out of this meeting, that is helping your brain understand that you are not an employee anymore. You are doing this for a living.
Yep.
And that requires you to get out and meet people. And frankly, I don't know. I like in-person networking. It's fun. Hey, you meet new people, have something to eat, have a drink. I don't know what the terror is that so many people have about it, but it's really can be a terrific way. And everyone thinks, oh, well, who needs to do anything in person now? Because we have the internet. But actually, what the internet has done it's made one-on-one relationships that you make in person incredibly powerful because they're so unusual. So many people are only willing to market online and aren't ever getting out of their caves and meeting live humans. And so when you do, you form incredible relationships with people. I have personally been to a bunch of conferences in person and formed terrific major relationships out of those that really made a huge difference in my business.
Great. And well, thank you very much. And
yeah, the other thing people do that I think is unusual and fun now is direct mail, is doing a direct mail package, because almost nobody does that anymore. That's also, if you're pitching copywriting to people, I think that can be a way to get noticed. It's an expense to put together a nice looking direct mail package with a lumpy item in it and all that good stuff, but it can get you noticed.
Yes, and speaking of getting noticed, let's talk a little bit about sort of the remote and flexible job options that are out there. And I know Carol had mentioned sort of apply, because the rejection thing, and from my own personal experience, gets so much easier. The more you apply to things and the more you're told no, the less it seems like a big deal. And you sort of learn to look for ways to get around the no as well. And, you know, if they say, oh, we're not looking for this right now, they might even say, you know, check back later for other opportunities or whatever. It's always that sort of, I think it's a quote from Dumb and Dumber, so you're saying there's a chance. It's always that just looking for the silver lining in every no gets a lot easier the more you do it. So here are some things to apply for to kind of help you with that. So in the writing job market, what we're seeing at FlexJobs is the most popular searches from job seekers on FlexJobs are for freelance writing and freelance editing jobs. So for anybody in this presentation today, that's probably not a big surprise because you're all looking for those types of things. And I know there was a question about editing and reviewing types of jobs, and are those available also? And yes, we do see a number of those if you are more interested in that side of it versus the writing side. I would definitely, you know, put editing out there as an option for some people as well. The types of flexibility that we see include virtual or remote, which is working from home, and a lot of, if you're a freelance writer, the vast majority of the time you'll be working from home. If you're a staff writer, you might be working from home, you might be working in an office. So it really depends on what types of writing jobs you're ultimately going for, but if you're looking to freelance, you will probably be working from home. Then we have, of course, part-time, temporary, short-term, long-term, all sorts of different types of flexibility that go into the writing job market. So another thing to think about as you are thinking of yourself as a freelance writer and making that mindset shift that, that Carol was talking about into I am a freelance writer, if you are, you know, going to do it, what types of flexibility are you ultimately looking for? How do you want your career as a freelance writer to be structured? How do you want it to look? How do you see yourself working? So some writing jobs. If you wanted to check out FlexJobs, you can see all of the jobs on our site without being a member, so you can kind of see what's out there. You'll see an abbreviated job description, and you won't be able to see the application information. Those two things are sort of reserved for the membership side. So if you become a FlexJobs member, you can see those. But you can at least get a sense of what is out there, which I think is one of the big questions, especially for career changers, you know, people looking to come into writing after doing something else, or who have sort of written a little bit on the side but are looking for more ideas of what can be done. Just seeing all of the different jobs that are out there will give you a really good sense of the types of writing jobs that are available. And as Carol mentioned, I mean, there's a lot of jobs on our site that come from tiny little places. Like I think Harvard Business Review was her example. We find writing jobs in the smallest little nooks and crannies of the internet. So it'll really give you a sense of the wide variety of stuff that's out there that you might not be able to find easily in other places. So you can go to flexjobs.com/jobs, and then we have an editing section and a writing section. You can look at both of those. Some of the subcategories that we have for writing jobs include blogging, copywriting, grant writing, online content, technical writing, and then we have, like I said, our editing and proofreading section, which is separate from the writing section. I would say also reading the job descriptions will give you a really good sense of the qualifications that people are looking for. I know a lot of people were talking about, is it important to have a particular expertise when you're writing, if it's writing for the healthcare industry or the marketing industry or whatever it might be, should you have that expertise? And the job descriptions give you a good idea of what the qualifications might be for freelance writing gigs in those areas, if you need that expertise or if you just need to be able to find really good sources who have the expertise that can fill in that part for you. And so that's something to take a look at on each description. In addition to what the writing actually is what are they looking for in a writer. That'll give you a really good idea of where you are versus where you need to go to get those types of jobs. And then just some surprising jobs. I know we had a number of teachers asking questions about how can you go from teaching to writing. So there are actually, education is one of the big areas that we see writing jobs cropping up. And essentially, as Carol was mentioning before, when you see words on the internet, someone has written them. And if you see words in a textbook or an online quiz or exam, people write those things. And not to get too simplistic about it, but that's one way to think about it is what are the opportunities in writing? Where you see words are often opportunities. So we've seen things for academic freelance writing, a localization writer for Nintendo, so the gaming industry, which is booming right now. People who have video game experience and who are good writers might be able to find work writing for video games. It's, whether it's the actual game words that you would see on the screen or whether it's script writing, all that sort of stuff, writers are a big part of that. Educational assessment, as I was talking about before, testing. Adjunct writing faculty, there's a lot of online courses now, and so if you have a background in writing, if you've been a freelance writer for a long time, if you have, or even a creative writer, that end of things, if you have the experience, you can also transition that into teaching too. So for anybody on the call who is sort of an experienced writer who's just looking for more opportunities and information, there's a lot of different writing opportunities there. Social media content writer, again, social media, the written word, if you are interested in that sort of thing, not anybody can just jump on. It seems like you might be able to, but companies more often than not now are hiring people to manage their social media and to make that a key component of their marketing efforts. And writing marketing copy for social media is a big part of that. So just some surprising things there to kind of get your wheels turning and the ideas turning. And then I know Carol actually wanted to chime in also about some of the other kind of surprising niches that she's seen out there. So Carol, you want to throw a couple more ideas out there?
Sure. Well, just within education, there's so much more even than you have listed there. Textbook supplements. If you have taught or you have an MA, that's a huge niche. And my friend John Soros, the Productive Writer, has a book about how to get into that market. There's writing for the alumni magazines. There's internal and external university communications to students, to donors, to the other parts of the other schools in the college. Speech writing is huge at colleges. I actually see a lot of ads for those, for speechwriter for the head of each college. And K-12 school districts hire freelancers too. I know more than one writer here in Seattle who's written for the Seattle School District as a freelancer. And I think one of them was on a pretty long contract. There are so many more sophisticated products out there that you don't see a lot of ads for, things like writing case studies and white papers. And recently I've been writing a product that was actually new to me called a confidential information memorandum, which is a document sort of like a business plan that companies put together when they want to sell the company. It's sort of similar to the kind of doc they put together to get funding from venture capitalists. And, I've been getting several $1,000s a project on each of those. So there's a lot of more sophisticated stuff out there, but it tends to come from getting a good client and then growing that relationship, rather than it being sort of the first in the door gig you're going to get to do. First, you're going to, rewrite their about page or create team bios or do some blog posts for them or write an article for the alumni magazine. And, and then the relationship starts to grow from there. And it's up to you to look around that business and upsell them and say, gee, I see your case studies are all 3 years old. Don't you think we should have some fresh ones? And, you start branching out into better paying types of work. But in general, in freelance writing, bigger is better. Often it's just a question of qualifying better clients, which most freelance writers don't take the time to do. They don't research on Hoover's or Manna and say, what's annual income at this company? Do they have a $1 million advertising budget, marketing budget, where they can really afford to hire me for ongoing, regularly occurring work? Because that's how freelance writers make a real living at this, not one-off job after one-off little job. Is we're looking for clients that we can have a relationship with and that need a lot of written and yet are not looking to go to a full-timer.
Absolutely, and I just want to transition over to the last slide so that we can show Carol's information and all of that, but we do have a couple other questions that I wanted to field. This one in particular came from a number of people, people who have spent the last, maybe dozen years, but number of years writing internally for a company, and they've written, every manner of thing, but it either has someone else's name on it or no name on it, because it's web copy or it's just sort of general, any kind of writing, case studies, that sort of stuff. How can they use that for samples if it doesn't have their name on it, if it's not attributed to them out there in the world? Is that all right? What's your recommendation for sort of using that writing that you've done in your previous job that doesn't necessarily have your byline on it, but is proof that you are a good writer?
Yeah, and that's a great question, and I do get it a lot. And the key thing to remember is if you had to have a byline on something to claim credit for it, then no copywriter would have a portfolio anywhere in the universe, because copywriting doesn't have your byline on it. So it doesn't matter that you are totally free to claim it unless you have signed a non-disclosure that forbids you to say you were the author. So step one is to figure out what your contractual situation is, and I guess my general take is, unless there is some contractual obstacle, that you just claim it. If you wrote it, you claim it. Ideally, you want to get a testimonial to pair with it, and that is sort of the proof about the fact that you wrote it. So you put that clip and you put the testimonial from that company right next to it. And I'm really glad people bring that up, because I hear all the time from people who tell me they have no clips because they were all at a company, or they were all 15 years ago, or I wasn't doing it full time, it was only on the side. None of that matters. If you wrote it, you wrote it. And unless you are under a non-disclosure agreement, you should claim it and put it in your portfolio and use it. And I think people are very nervous about, oh, my clips are too old, or, I'm not the only person who worked on this piece. Well, then, if that's true, then just say that. I was a contributor to this publication, to this special section, to this annual report. And the thing is, you might be surprised how often you can just say, I've been a long time staffer for so-and-so, and I wrote a lot of communications there, and now I'm freelancing, and the people just will go, awesome. The other thing to do is consider trying to pitch that client, see if you can get that employer back as a freelance client. And for quite a lot of people, that's how they make the transition to freelancing, is that they get that one client, that first big client they get is their former employer. And that gives them, maybe $1,000 or $2,000 a month as a base that they can sort of use to transition over, and then they look for more clients. So, never assume that your current employer might not explore that idea with you. since they already know and love what you do.
Yeah, that's a great point. And you have that connection there also already, and with previous employers, that, like you said, making those connections, your network is incredibly important, and you've got it right there.
Yeah.
Great. And just maybe another question or two here. I know we've reached the top of the hour, but everyone is incredibly grateful for the information you've already provided, and of course looking for more. And so a couple people have asked about sort of transitioning into that expertise area. If you don't have an expertise, like you were talking about healthcare or whatever, how do you transition into that expertise area? How do you kind of position yourself as an expert in that area? Do you have any tips for whether that's even necessary? And if so, how people might do that?
Yeah, that's a really common question I get too. I'm not being a freelance writer because I don't feel qualified. I don't know enough about anything. And all you have to know is how to write and have at least a basic, knowledge of a topic. Because most of the freelance writing that pays money, you are not going to be the expert. And this is a big head shift for people who have their own blogs. And the blog is all about me, and my opinion and my thoughts. And most paid freelance writing isn't going to be like that. It's going to be you doing research, finding experts to quote, and the expertise you bring to the table is a familiarity with that industry so you know who to ask the good questions of, and writing skill. And that's it. You are generally not the expert. Even if you are an expert, you will need to go find and quote other experts to write your stories. It's like I've written articles for the Writer's Digest and for the Writer's Market about how to get jobs online, which obviously I know a little about, but nothing in there is cited to me. I interviewed other people and quoted them because I was serving as the reporter in that story. So, that's a big fear that people have, or that I don't have enough credentials. I need to go back for an MFA, and then I'll feel qualified to be a freelance writer. No, no, no. All that matters is if you can write it. I'm a college dropout. I had 2 years of college, and it just makes no real difference. I know so many people who do not have a formal education, or their degree was not in any related topic to journalism or communications or writing. It matters whether you can write powerfully and compellingly and persuasively and tell a great story. If you can do that, you can work in this line of work.
Oh, and I think that's a perfect place to kind of wrap it up too, because everyone here has that ability. I think, what people are saying, all of the questions that we're seeing where there's any sort of doubt in getting into freelance writing, or they're uncertain about how to do it, they say, I have, been a writer, or I have experience writing. It looks like there are writers in this audience. So I think that's a great way to end it, is that is really the ultimate qualification. That's what you need to do. And you'll be able to find experts out there who can support the great writing that you do. And yes, so let me just turn it over to Carol for a minute to talk about the Freelance Writers Den and kind of what that's about, and a little special that's going on today. And let me also say, for anybody who has to pop off, you will be receiving an email in the next 24 hours. There's like a 30-second survey attached to that email, so if you could take that, that would be great. And you can also sign up for the FlexJobs newsletter to receive some discounts related to job searching and FlexJobs memberships and all sorts of fun stuff. And then, yes, please, a big thanks before we go into it, but big thanks to Carol Tice. I know this has been extremely helpful for everybody. The comments that are coming in all clearly show that you've been really helpful to people. So thank you for that. And, yeah, talk a little bit about Freelance Writers Den and making a living writing.
Sure thing. And, thrilled to hear that people found this useful, because that is really why I get up in the morning, is to help more writers earn more money more faster. And my blog is makealivingwriting.com, and I started it in 2008. It has more than 700 free posts for you to peruse. If you are interested in having the kind of writer network and the chance to ask experts questions 24/7, access to 100+ hours of training on how to do various things in freelance writing, that's what we have inside Freelance Writers Den. And the kicker is we're actually open today. We are only open about a half dozen times a year for a few days at a time. because we focus most of our energy on serving our current membership, which is around 1,000 members. And we just need to onboard people in a focused way. But if you are interested in freelance writing, you can join right now. And I can almost never say that to people. So I'm excited to have a chance to say, hey, you could actually just get in there. So I guess I can't post to everyone in chat, but I think you see the freelancewritersden.com link there in chat, and the buttons should just be right up on the homepage. I know about 100 new members have joined so far this morning. We take about 300 or so, and then we close again, because that's about how many we feel like we can orient and get rolling. And so, yeah, check it out if you would like a lot of support for figuring all this out.
Fantastic. Thank you, Carol. And also you have a new book out, too, for people to take a look at.
I do, yeah. There's a little picture of it there, and it's actually a compendium of advice from 40 different new freelance writers about how they are getting it done. 40 freelance writers share how they find clients, stay motivated, and earn well today. And it's really a collection of the very best of my guest posts from the blog over the past about 3 years. And just super, super useful info in there on how to prospect, how to market, how to get clients to pay you more than they're already paying you, all kind of good stuff.
Awesome. That sounds perfect. Hopefully everybody will check that out. Check out Freelance Writers Den. It looks like we have a couple hundred people left on the call here, so we may be able to fill up those remaining spots for you. But yeah, again, thank you so much, Carol. This was extremely informative. I've been doing this for years, and I still learned a number of new things. I've got all sorts of notes. So thank you very, very much, and best of luck to everyone out there in pursuing a freelance writing career.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks, everyone. And on behalf of FlexJobs, have a wonderful rest of the day. Thank you.